the type of kid that would come in the room or come in the house and say, hey, everybody, just wanting to make everybody look out. But she was so young, and nobody deserves to leave this world like that, especially by someone that thought that was going to protect them and be there for them.
He stopped her and said, "You're not going to find my name. I've just killed someone." And at that point, the red flags started to go off.
North Carolina, August 2019. A quiet summer morning, the kind where you'd expect kids laughing, families heading to the lake. But this day took a dark turn. A man walked into a police station, not to report a crime, but to confess to one. His name was Zaria Burgess. Joshua didn't waste any time. He told the officers he was there to turn himself in. At first, they thought it was a mistake, maybe a traffic ticket, an old warrant. But Joshua stopped them. His words, cold and clear, cut through the usual police station chatter. "You won't find my name. I'm here because I killed someone." The officers led him to a room. They needed to understand. Who was this person? Who was the victim? What unfolded in that interrogation room was a story so disturbing, so filled with cruelty, it would leave even seasoned investigators shaken. Joshua Burgess confessed to the unthinkable, the murder of his own 15-year-old daughter, Zaria. But this wasn't just a killing. It was the end of more than 24 hours of unimaginable torment. Zaria was subjected to horrific torture and sexual assault. The details, they paint a picture of pure evil, a darkness so profound it's hard to grasp. This isn't just a story about a murder, it's about the shattering of innocence, the betrayal of the most sacred trust. It's a case that would lead the county sheriff to describe the scene as something straight out of the most horrifying horror movie. What could drive a father to such brutality? What secrets lay hidden behind the doors of that ordinary-looking house? And how did those who loved Zaria miss the signs of the nightmare unfolding? These are the questions we must confront as we delve deeper into the tragic story of Zaria Burgess. The man who walked into that police station, Joshua Burgess, he wasn't just a name, he was a father. And his victim, Zaria Jocelyn Burgess, was more than just a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with a life ahead of her. Zaria entered the world on December 23, 2003. A little early, a special gift for her mom, Akeisha Pope, just before Christmas. It was a big deal for her dad too, Joshua. His birthday was just 2 days later on Christmas Day. Akeisha and Joshua, they were just kids themselves when Zaria came along. They met at Weddington School, teenagers in love. 15 and 16. That's how old they were when their baby girl was born. Like many young couples, their relationship didn't last forever. Akeisha and Joshua went their separate ways, and Zaria made her home mostly with her mom in Union County, North Carolina. But Joshua, he stayed in the picture. He was a part of Zaria's life. Every weekend, she'd go see him. If you looked at his social media, you'd see a dad who seemed to adore his daughter. He called her his mini-me and shared tons of photos telling the world how much love he had for her. Birthdays, trips to the movies, those regular weekend visits, he was there. A lot of people saw Zaria as a happy kid, someone who had her father in her life. As the years passed, Zaria grew into a teenager, a bright light at her school, Herman R. She was on the dance team and played in the school orchestra. Alan Sturdivant, her orchestra director, remembered her as full of energy, a great addition to the school. By all accounts, she seemed genuinely happy. Just your average teenage girl, laughing with her friends, going to the movies, doing all the things teenagers do. But like they say, there was something Zaria was hiding, a fear she carried inside. She had told one of her closest friends how much she actually disliked going to her father's house. She was worried about him, about his temper. She said he would get angry at her for no good reason, and it scared her. Zaria also felt like her dad's family didn't really accept her. It was a tough situation, being biracial with a white father and a black mother. Zaria's friends and their parents had their suspicions. They thought Joshua might be using drugs, but Zaria never confirmed it. Her mom, Akeisha, it's hard to know what she knew. Did she understand how her daughter truly felt about visiting her dad? For a long time, Akeisha was used to those weekends without Zaria. She used that time to be part of a dance group at her church. The only way she could do that was to send Zaria to her father's on the weekends. Then came the weekend of August 17, 2019. Zaria begged Akisha not to make her go to her dad's. She was desperate. She even messaged a friend, asking if she could spend the night. But the friend couldn't help. Her family had plans of their own, so Zaria had no choice. She had to go to her father's house. That friend, to this day, she wishes she could have done things differently. Akisha, she didn't see her daughter's fear as a warning. She just thought it was teenage drama, kids wanting to do what they want, being disobedient. So, she sent Zaria so she could go to her church dance. Akisha had no idea, she couldn't have imagined, that this would be the last time she'd ever see her daughter. Sunday, August 18, 2019. It was around 9:24 in the morning. Joshua Burgess, 32 years old, walked into that police station. He found the first officer he could and told him he was turning himself in for a crime. The officer started to get his name to check for warrants, but Joshua stopped him. He said, "You won't find me in the system. I just killed someone." The police took him to a room to get the full story. Before the news got out, Joshua gave them every detail. He said his daughter's full name. And then, without any emotion, as calm as could be, he explained that he had taken her life. He told them they could go to his house, 5100 Hampton Meadows Road in Union County, Monroe, North Carolina, and they would find her body. Neighbors around that house, they were shocked. They didn't even know anyone lived there. They thought it was empty, or maybe a place where people went to do drugs. The police went to that address, and there they found Zaria Burgess, 15 years old. What they saw, it was like something out of a horror movie. When they opened the door to Joshua's house, they walked into the living room. Zaria's body was there. It was a terrible sight. She wasn't wearing any clothes. She had injuries all over her body. There was a very bad wound on her neck. Her hands and feet were tied up with handcuffs. Joshua had placed Zaria's body in a way, almost like he was showing off what he had done. That's what it looked like, especially after what he told the police when he confessed. Even though Zaria had many wounds, the doctors who examined her body said the thing that killed her was that deep wound on her neck. They called it a sharp object wound. But that's not the whole story. There are more awful details about what happened before Zaria died. Joshua tortured his own daughter for more than 22 hours. He sexually assaulted her. He messed with her mind. He tried to choke her. Joshua was charged with a lot of serious crimes: first-degree murder, sexual assault of a child, kidnapping, sexual exploitation of a minor. Before we go on with this heartbreaking story, I need to ask you something. If you think these kinds of stories need to be told, if you believe we need to know about these things, please leave a comment. Share your thoughts. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear it. Think about becoming a channel sponsor. It helps me keep doing this work, telling these difficult stories, remembering victims like Zaria. Every time you subscribe, every comment, every share, it helps these important stories reach more people. In June 2022, after a trial that lasted 3 weeks, Joshua Burgess, who was 35 years old then, got the death penalty for killing Zaria. He also got another 76 years for all the other crimes he committed. They found him guilty. In North Carolina, when they give the death penalty, they use lethal injection. And to give that sentence, the jury has to agree completely. Everyone has to vote for it. If they don't, the person gets life in prison. Even though Joshua said he did it, they still had to have a trial. The state wanted the death penalty. And even though he confessed, Joshua said he was not guilty. His lawyer even asked the court not to show his confession to the jury again, but that request was turned down. The detectives said Joshua gave several reasons for what he did when he confessed, but there were two main ideas that kept coming up: control and lust. People who were in the courtroom when they played Joshua's confession said he didn't show any remorse. He said he had planned everything that weekend with Zaria, from having breakfast with her to the terrible things he had in mind. He thought about it all day until he went to the police station. He even said he had unnatural feelings for Zaria. As she got older, he didn't want her to be with anyone else. He wanted her to belong only to him, in a very sick and twisted way. He also said that at first he was going to make a scene at the police station, so they would shoot him. He wanted to die, but he changed his mind because he was scared to die. Those who were there said Joshua claimed he enjoyed every moment of what he did to Zaria. He said those were the best weekends of his life. After he hurt Zaria badly and choked her, he thought she was dead. But she still had some strength left. She got up and tried to get away. She ran to the door, but Joshua caught her. He grabbed her and gave her a deadly wound in the back of her neck. Then he put her body on the living room floor. The Union County Sheriff, Eddie Cathay, said the details of this murder are too awful to talk about. Every officer and detective who worked on this case, they all feel the pain of what happened to Zaria. There's no good reason, no explanation for why Joshua did what he did. The sheriff's office said this was a very cruel and cold-blooded murder of a child who didn't deserve it. This case was very hard on everyone involved. They still feel sadness for Zaria's mom and pray for her. After Zaria died, people on the internet started trying to figure out why her father, who seemed to love her, would kill her in such a horrible way. Like I said before, detectives said his main reasons were lust and control. But the state of North Carolina didn't give out much information about the case. This led to a lot of guessing and talking about it on social media. These internet detectives looked at Joshua's Facebook page. They started saying he was a white supremacist because of some memes he posted that were about race, especially ones with Barack and Michelle Obama. They also pointed out some pages he liked, including Donald Trump's pages, Fox News, and a group called Flame of the Serpent, which doesn't exist anymore. Because of all this, they thought Zaria's death might have been some kind of ritual murder, to join a white supremacist group or a satanic cult. One of the most disturbing things Joshua posted was from February 8, 2016. In the picture, he's holding a big knife, a kabar knife, and there are other knives in the background. The caption said, "I just really love cutting people." Then he said, "Oh, I meant things. I love cutting things." Your support can help stop things like this from happening again. Please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment. Share this video with everyone you know, so Zaria's story is never forgotten. Stay with me, because soon I'll share another important story that we need to know about. Zaria's funeral was on August 25, 2019. It was held at the Christ Discipleship Bible Worship Center in Marshville, North Carolina. The Monroe High School Red Storm School Orchestra played at the 2019 Battle of the Bands in Dillon, South Carolina, and they dedicated their performance to Zaria. In all the news stories and articles about Zaria, there was no mention of Joshua ever abusing her before. The only things they said were that he had anger issues or that she didn't want to be around him. There was nothing about him physically hurting her or being violent with her mother, Akisha. There are no records of that in their family history, although there were mentions of drug addiction. It's still hard to understand. Was he a bad person all along and just hid it well? Was there violence that no one ever knew about? How can someone wake up one day and decide to let evil take over and do something so terrible to their own child, and plan it all out? Even Zaria's family can't figure out why this happened. Zaria's family is heartbroken. No punishment will ever be enough for the evil person who did this horrible thing. There's no good reason for what Joshua Burgess did. What we do know is that Zaria was a loving, lively girl. Her life was cut short by the awful actions of a man who should have been the one protecting her. This story is devastating. It shows us how important it is to listen to our children when they're worried, and to pay attention to any signs that something might be wrong, even when a family looks normal on the outside. Sometimes, the real monsters aren't the ones in stories, they're real. And their victims are often kids who can't defend themselves. Like Amani Moss. Today we're also going to look at how the system let Zaria down and what we can learn from what happened to her. On the surface, Zaria's life looked like any other teenager's. School, friends, fun. But beneath that bright exterior, a shadow was growing. Zaria carried a secret, a heavy feeling she couldn't shake off. She had told someone close to her how much she disliked being at her father's house. It wasn't just a typical kid thing, not wanting to visit a parent. This was deeper. Zaria was scared. She had seen a side of her father that terrified her. She spoke about his anger, how he would get mad at her for no clear reason. It wasn't just a little annoyance, it was a real fear. And it wasn't just about his anger. Zaria also felt something else, a kind of rejection. She didn't feel accepted by her father's family. This was a tough thing for her to deal with. Her mom was black, her dad was white, and Zaria was both. Being biracial can bring its own challenges, and it seemed like she was experiencing that within her own family. There were other worries too. Zaria's friends and their parents had suspicions about Joshua. They thought he might be using drugs. But Zaria never said for sure. It was just a feeling, a concern that hung in the air. Her mom, Akeisha, played a big role in Zaria's life. But there's a question that lingers. Did Akeisha truly know how her daughter felt? Did she see the fear Zaria was trying to hide? For a while, Akeisha had gotten used to those weekends without Zaria. It gave her a chance to be part of a dance group at her church. But to do that, Zaria had to go to her father's on the weekends. It was the only way. Then came that weekend, the one that changed everything, August 17, 2019. Zaria was desperate. She begged Akeisha not to send her to her dad's. It wasn't just a little protest, it was a plea. She even reached out to a friend, asking if she could stay over. But the friend couldn't help. They had their own plans. So Zaria was left with no other choice. She had to go to her father's house. That friend, even now, carries the weight of that day. She wishes she could have done something, anything, to change what happened. Akeisha, though, she didn't see the signs. She thought it was just teenage behavior, kids acting up, not wanting to do what they're told. So she sent Zaria, so she could go to her church dance. Akeisha had no idea. She couldn't have imagined the horror that was about to unfold. That this would be the last time she would ever lay eyes on her daughter. I know this was a heavy one, but these stories need to be told. If you're feeling it, give this video a thumbs up and share it to spread awareness. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our true crime community. For those of you who've been here a while, you know I appreciate you. Thanks for sticking around. That weekend of August 17, 2019, it was supposed to be like any other. Zaria's regular visit to her father's house. A routine event in their lives. But this time something was different. Zaria was filled with dread. She pleaded with her mom, Akeisha, not to make her go. It wasn't just a casual "I don't want to." It was a real, desperate plea. Zaria was trying everything she could to avoid that visit. Her fear was so strong that she even reached out to a friend, hoping for a way out. She asked if she could stay overnight, just to get away from having to go to her father's. Sadly, her friend couldn't help. Their family already had plans for the weekend. It was an unfortunate turn of events, a missed opportunity that would later weigh heavily on that friend's heart. Zaria was out of options. She had to go. Akeisha, Zaria's mom, she didn't see the alarm bells. She didn't realize the depth of her daughter's fear. Instead, she saw it as typical teenage behavior. Kids acting up, not wanting to do what they're told. It's a common thing. Parents often think they know what's best, that it's just a phase. So, Akeisha sent Zaria to her father's. She had her own reasons. She wanted to be able to go to her church dance group. That was important to her. But to make that happen, Zaria had to go to her dad's. It was the arrangement they had. What Akeisha didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly imagined, was that this decision would have devastating consequences. This would be the last time she would ever see her daughter alive. The last hug, the last goodbye, the last chance to say "I love you." All of it, gone in an instant. Sunday morning, August 18, 2019. The day began like any other, but it was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. Around 9:24 a.m., a man walked through the doors of a police station. His name was Zaria Burgess. He approached the first officer he saw. He didn't come to report a crime, he came to confess to one. The officer asked for his name, ready to check the system for any warrants. But Joshua stopped him. He said those words that would send chills down anyone's spine. "You don't need to do that. You won't find me in the system. I just killed someone." The police officers, they had heard a lot of things, but this was different. They led Joshua into an interrogation room, a place where stories unfold, where truths are revealed. They needed to know what had happened. Before the news spread, before the world knew, Joshua told them everything. He said his daughter's full name, Zaria Burgess, and then, with a calmness that was unsettling, he explained that he had taken her life. He told them where they could find her body, 5100 Hampton Meadows Road, in Union County, Monroe, North Carolina. The people who lived nearby, the neighbors, they were shocked. They didn't even know anyone lived in that house. They thought it was abandoned, or maybe a place where people went to do drugs. The police officers went to that address, and there they found the body of 15-year-old Zaria Burgess. The scene they encountered, it was something out of a nightmare. When they opened the door to Joshua's house, they stepped into the living room. Zaria's body was there. It was a disturbing sight. She wasn't wearing any clothes. She had injuries all over her body. There was a severe wound on her neck. Her hands and feet were restrained with handcuffs. Joshua had positioned Zaria's body in a way, almost as if he was displaying what he had done. That's how it appeared, especially considering what he had told the police when he confessed. Even though Zaria had numerous wounds, the medical examination determined that the cause of her death was that deep neck injury. They described it officially as a sharp object wound to the neck. But that's not the complete picture. There are more horrifying details about what occurred before Zaria's death. Joshua had tortured his own daughter for more than 22 hours. He committed sexual assault against her. He psychologically abused her. He attempted to strangle her. Joshua was charged with a long list of serious crimes: first-degree murder, statutory sexual assault of a person 15 years or younger, 3 counts of first-degree sexual assault, first-degree kidnapping, and first-degree sexual exploitation of a minor. This story is difficult to hear, but it's important. If you believe that these kinds of stories should be told, if you think it's crucial to shine a light on these dark events, please consider showing your support. You can leave a comment, share your thoughts, subscribe to this channel. Spread this video among those who need to hear it. Think about becoming a channel sponsor. It helps to support the work of covering child safety issues and honoring the memory of victims like Zaria. Every subscription, every comment, every share, it makes a difference. It helps these important stories reach more people. In June 2022, after a trial that lasted 3 weeks, 35-year-old Zaria Burgess was sentenced to death for the murder of Zaria. He also received an additional 76 years for the other charges. He was found guilty. In North Carolina, the death penalty is carried out by lethal injection. For that sentence to be given, the jury must vote unanimously. Otherwise, the accused is sentenced to life imprisonment. Even though Joshua confessed to his crime, a trial was still necessary. The state was seeking the death penalty. And despite his confession, Joshua pleaded not guilty. His attorney even requested that his recorded confession not be played again for the jury, but that request was denied. According to detectives, Joshua provided several reasons for his actions during his confession, but 2 main themes stood out: control and lust. Witnesses who were present in the courtroom when Joshua's confession was played said he spoke without any remorse. He stated that he had planned his entire sinister weekend with Zaria, from having breakfast with her to the horrific acts he imagined he would commit. He fantasized about it all day until he surrendered to the police. He even admitted that he had unnatural feelings towards Zaria. As she grew older, he didn't want her to be with anyone else. He wanted her to belong only to him, in a twisted and perverse way. He also revealed that initially he had planned to create a scene at the police station, hoping that the police would shoot him. Essentially, this would have been suicide by cop. However, he eventually abandoned this plan because he was afraid to die. Those who were present said Joshua claimed that he enjoyed every moment of what he did to Zaria, and that those were the best weekends of his entire life. After inflicting severe injuries on Zaria and strangling her, he thought she was already dead. But the girl managed to gather her last bit of strength and came to. She had enough strength to get up and try to escape. She rushed to the door, but Joshua caught her. He grabbed her and inflicted a fatal wound to the back of her neck. Then he placed her body on the living room floor. Union County Sheriff Eddie Cathy said the details of this murder are unspeakable. Every officer and detective involved in this case feels the weight of what happened to Zaria. There is no logical explanation that can justify why Joshua did what he did. The Union County Sheriff's Office stated that this was an especially heinous, cruel, and cold-blooded murder of an innocent child. This case was emotionally draining for everyone involved. They continued to grieve with Zaria's mother and pray for her. After Zaria's death, people on the internet started searching for possible motives, trying to understand why her father, who outwardly appeared to love his daughter very much, would kill her in such a horrific way. As mentioned earlier, detectives stated that his main motives for the murder were lust and control. However, the state of North Carolina kept information about this case confidential, which led to a lot of speculation on social media. These internet detectives investigated Joshua's Facebook page. They began accusing him of being a white supremacist based on racially charged memes he had posted, particularly ones featuring Barack and Michelle Obama. They also pointed to various pages he had liked, including Donald Trump's pages, Fox News, and a now defunct organization called Flame of the Serpent. Because of this, they suggested that Zaria's death was a kind of ritual murder, perhaps for entry into a white supremacist group or a satanic cult. One of the most disturbing posts made by Joshua was from February 8, 2016. In it, he is holding a kabar knife with a long blade. In the background, there is an assortment of other folding knives. The caption said, "I just really love cutting people." Then he added, "Oh, I meant things. I love cutting things." Your support can help prevent similar tragedies from happening again. Please subscribe to this channel, press the like button, and leave a comment below. Share this video with everyone you know so that Zaria's story is never forgotten. Stay with me, as I will soon share another important case that also deserves our attention and awareness. Zaria's funeral service was held on August 25, 2019, at the Christ Discipleship Bible Worship Center in Marshville, North Carolina. The Monroe High School Red Storm School Orchestra dedicated their performance at the 2019 Battle of the Bands in Dillon, South Carolina, to Zaria. In all the articles and news stories that were published, there was no information about any previous instances of abuse between Joshua and Zaria, apart from mentions that he was angry, or that she didn't want to be around him. There were no mentions that he had physically harmed her, or that there was violence between him and her mother, Akeisha. There are no reports of this in their family history, although there were mentions of drug addiction. It's still difficult to understand. Was he a pervert all along and just good at hiding it? Was there violence that simply went undocumented? How can someone wake up one day and decide, today, I'll let the devil take over and commit this horrible act on my own child, and even plan it out? Even family members are puzzled as to why this happened. Zaria's family was devastated by her loss. No punishment will ever seem sufficient for the sick individual who committed such a crime. There is no logical reason that could explain Joshua Burgess's actions. Ultimately, testimonies about Zaria's character indicate that she was a loving, full-of-life girl whose life was tragically cut short by the horrific actions of a man who should have been the one protecting her. This story breaks the heart and is a terrible reminder of how important it is to listen to our children's concerns and be vigilant about warning signs that may arise, even when the family outwardly seems normal. Sometimes, the scariest monsters don't live in fairy tales, but in real life, and often their victims are defenseless children. Like Imani Moss. The officers arrived at 5100 Hampton Meadows Road. What they found inside was a scene that words struggle to capture. It was a place where innocence had been brutally taken, where a father's love had twisted into something monstrous. As they stepped through the doorway, they entered the living room. Zaria's body was there. It was a sight that would forever be etched in their memories. Her lifeless form lay before them, a chilling testament to the violence she had suffered. She wasn't wearing any clothes. Injuries marked her body, a roadmap of the torture she had endured. There was a deep and terrible wound on her neck, the wound that ultimately ended her young life. Her hands and feet were bound, restrained with handcuffs. It was a scene of captivity, of helplessness. The way Zaria's body was positioned, it was almost as if Joshua had arranged it, displaying his horrific act. It was a chilling detail, a sign of the coldness and lack of remorse that characterized his crime. This wasn't just a murder, it was a spectacle of cruelty. The investigators who walked into that house, they were used to seeing difficult things. But this was different. This was something that shook them to their core. The scene was so disturbing, so filled with horror, that it was compared to something from the most terrifying horror movie. The examination of Zaria's body revealed a story of unimaginable suffering. It wasn't just about the final act, it was about the long hours of torment that came before. Joshua Burgess had inflicted cruelty upon his own daughter for more than 22 hours. This wasn't just physical violence. He had subjected her to sexual assault. He had played with her mind, inflicting psychological abuse. He had attempted to take her life through strangulation. The official cause of death was a sharp object wound to the neck. But that clinical term doesn't even begin to capture the full brutality of what Zaria endured. The horror went far beyond that single, fatal wound. Joshua Burgess was charged with the most serious crimes imaginable: first-degree murder, sexual assault, kidnapping, and many other heinous acts. Even though he had confessed, there still had to be a trial. The state wanted him to receive the death penalty. And even with his confession, Joshua pleaded not guilty. His lawyer even tried to stop the court from playing his confession for the jury again. but the court said no. During the trial, detectives shared what they had learned about Joshua's reasons for what he did. They said it came down to two main things: control and lust. When they played Joshua's confession in court, people who were there said he showed no remorse. He talked about how he had planned that entire weekend with Zaria, every detail, from having breakfast with her to the awful things he had planned to do. He had been thinking about it all day until he went to the police. He also admitted that he had unnatural feelings towards Zaria. As she got older, he didn't want her to be with anyone else. He wanted her to belong only to him. It was a twisted and sick desire. He even said that at first he had planned to make a scene at the police station so that the officers would shoot him. He wanted to die. But then he changed his mind because he was afraid. Those who were there said Joshua claimed he enjoyed every moment of what he did to Zaria. He said those were the best weekends of his life. After he had severely injured Zaria and tried to strangle her, he thought she was dead. But she still had some strength left. She managed to get up and try to run away. She ran towards the door. But Joshua caught her. He grabbed her and inflicted a deadly wound to the back of her neck. Then he laid her body on the living room floor. In June 2022, after the trial, Zaria Burgess was given the death penalty for Zaria's murder. He also got 76 more years in prison for the other crimes. He was found guilty. In North Carolina, the way they carry out the death penalty is by lethal injection. To give that sentence, every single person on the jury has to agree. If they don't, then the person gets life in prison instead. The detectives who worked on the case said Joshua's reasons were about control and lust. In his confession, he didn't show any sadness or regret. He talked about how he had planned everything that weekend with Zaria, from the moment they had breakfast to the awful things he imagined doing to her. He had been thinking about it all day until he went to the police station. The news of what Zaria Burgess had done sent shockwaves through the community. People were stunned, trying to understand how a father could commit such a terrible act against his own child. It was beyond comprehension. Zaria's family was left completely devastated. They were trying to deal with a loss that felt impossible to grasp. Their lives were shattered, their hearts broken. How do you come to terms with something so evil, so senseless? As people searched for answers, some turned to the internet. Internet detectives, as they were called, started digging into Joshua's online life, looking for clues, for any sign that could explain his actions. They found disturbing things on his social media, things that made them question his motives and what he truly believed. They uncovered posts that were racially charged, memes that seemed to promote white supremacist ideas. Some of these posts focused on Barack and Michelle Obama. They also found that he had liked certain pages, including pages related to Donald Trump, Fox News, and a group that no longer exists, called Flame of the Serpent. These discoveries led to a lot of speculation. Some people wondered if Zaria's death was connected to some kind of ritual, a way for Joshua to be accepted into a white supremacist group or a satanic cult. One of the most unsettling things they found was a post from February 8, 2016. In the post, Joshua was holding a long knife, a kabar knife. There were other knives visible in the background. The caption he wrote was deeply disturbing. "I just really love cutting people." But then he added, "Oh, I meant things. I love cutting things." All of this fueled the speculation and the search for answers. People were desperate to understand the why, even though there might not be any answer that could truly make sense of such a horrific crime. Zaria Burgess's story is a tragedy that forces us to look at some hard truths. It reminds us how important it is to really listen to our children, to pay close attention to what they're telling us, even when things seem normal on the surface. We need to be aware of the signs that something might be wrong. Children sometimes try to tell us when they're scared or in trouble, but we might not always hear them. We might dismiss their fears or think they're just being dramatic. But Zaria's case shows us that we can't afford to do that. We have to take their concerns seriously, no matter how small they might seem. This case also shows us that danger can hide in plain sight. Sometimes the most frightening threats don't come from strangers or faraway places. They can come from within our own families, from people we trust. That's a difficult thing to accept, but it's a reality we have to face. We have to be vigilant. We have to be willing to look beyond appearances and see what's really going on. We have to be ready to step in and protect those who can't protect themselves. Zaria's life was full of promise. She was a young girl with dreams and hopes, just like any other teenager. But her life was cut short by an act of unimaginable evil. We must never forget her. We must remember her story and use it to make sure that something like this never happens again. Let Zaria's memory be a call to action, a reminder that we all have a role to play in protecting children and creating a safer world.